Hello team, it's time for the Daily Detangler. All right, hey, how you doing? I want to talk about solving 3D problems, figuring them out really, and leaning into the concept of tackling a problem and tackling it like a puzzle. So I'm going to share a little bit about perspective, engagement, and some of the revelations I've had in engaging in detangling myself from the 3D puzzle solving process, right? So this is the 3D process. Catalyst walked through it, and he's actually used it a long time, I believe. And this is basically the way in which he's articulated the challenge of trying to emerge to a three-dimensional problem, much like the box or the cube at the top, and then what it takes to figure out what the answer solution might be, to figure out what the scope is and what the pieces are, and then how to coordinate and organize those pieces so that the problem can be solved. And one of the things that I really like about this is the concept of problem solving and solving a puzzle. So I'm going to lean into that. So here are two 1,000 piece puzzles. And I asked myself, well, I understand the 3D process, but how would I go about solving these puzzles? How would I engage and figure this out? What would be required to tackle the puzzle? And let me ask you, how would you solve these puzzles? What would you do to go about solving them? Is it fun for you to solve problems like this or puzzles like this? Is it relaxing? Some people think it's relaxing. Others drives them nuts. Right? Is it fun to do by yourself, or do you like putting puzzles together with a group? Does it stress you out? I remember with my daughter who graduated from college, one of the things I did for her in middle school was take one of these batteries of tests. I hired somebody and she took a bunch of tests because I really wanted her to understand how her brain works and kind of what her natural strengths are. And one of the things that the person doing the readout, who was highly trained psychologist, and said, look, you're smart enough to be a doctor, but it would drive you nuts. You won't be able to do the routine over and over and over again. You could probably tell yourself that you could be a doctor, but you're going to hate it. You need to solve problems. You need to be in situations where it'll challenge you. In fact, if you're not in those types of situations, you're going to actually create problems for yourself. And then you'll have to solve those problems, and that's not good. I remember that conversation. So some people are wired to be a little bit more problem solvers. And all of us have different perspectives. Maybe we have a short, I guess propensity, or kind of a short fuse, if you will, or time horizon when it comes to tackling complex problems. Others can spend maybe days, weeks, months, years figuring things out. And we all have different perspectives, right? So some are going to look at this conceptually, some are going to want examples, emotively, task or process driven, and others are going to analyze things. And, along the way, we're going to get tangled. These are natural consequences of tackling something new and engaging in the complexity and the uncertainty and really the ambiguity of trying to tackle a problem that we may not understand. When you look at these puzzles here, and I say, hey, how would you go about it? That's a bit of a different question than giving you 10 minutes and forcing you to solve it, right? These two things are different. And we can put some challenges in front of ourselves. These are self-driven tangles, and also the environment around us can get us tangled. So we all have different perspectives and we all get tangled. So how would you go about tackling this, this 3D problem solving process? Well, is it something to be solved or something to engage in? What do you see here? Where would you naturally start? I don't know about you, but I would start at the top. I'd be willing to bet that most people started on the top. But what about the right first? Why not start on the right with what is the outcome? Or maybe start on the left with what we have laying around, or the middle, right? So I'm going to do something a little unconventional, and I'm going to apply the model map match approach to this and see what happens. I'm going to just play with this and see what happens. Maybe something will reveal itself by starting with what would I try to do to figure out what the answer is or the outcome is on the right side. What would I figure out and look at with regard to the puzzle pieces, and then how would I put them in the box and see what emerges? So let's do that. And as soon as I started doing that, I got tangles. So I'm going to bring the tangles in here and talk about what tangled me up along the way. And maybe you can compare and see if these are relevant to you. So the first thing that I'm going to do is, and what I told myself, well, if I'm going to start on the right side, of this 3D process, what is that? Well, it's kind of the end in mind, right? So I'm going to begin with the end in mind, and started to figure that out and to engage with that. And I used myself, right? I have a challenge of wanting to make tangles more accessible. So my 3D problem is pretty complex because there's a lot of human nature involved. So I'll just, loosely say I'm going to help tangles become more mainstream. So beginning with the end in mind, what kind of tangles on the tangle process do I have, right? And how would I move from, I don't have time to do this, I need more information, I don't have the technology that helps me. On that one, it's just nuts. So it's just nuts on the information. It's like there's no technology that does this. All the project management software assumes we're breaking work down into discrete tasks, and we're actually trying to manage flows and outcomes. So it's like technology doesn't exist to do this. That's a whole other thing, but I'll try not to go down that rabbit hole. And I don't have time. So how do I move to leaning into the tangle research? How do I move to, hey, I'm going to engage and listen. I'm going to repeat back what I think we're trying to do. I'm going to try to do something because it's better than nothing, right? And some things that have worked along the way for me is to explore, like, why do these things happen, or what are we really trying to achieve? How would I zoom in and zoom out, right? How do I lean into that to just basically try to shape out and write down what the end in mind is, what's the result or what's the outcome? And what's really valuable to whom? Is it really about me doing the activity, or is it about how do people use the tangles? What actions can they create or take based on what the puzzle's answer or solution is? And really, what's the essence of the outcome in that end in mind view? So in that view, back to the puzzle pieces to detangle myself from engaging in this. It's about, if I have a time tangle, I really can't think about time. I remember I went to this one person's house from my church, and I went to his house, and he was starting a puzzle. And I went back to his house 6 months later, and the puzzle still wasn't done. So I asked him about that. It's like, hey, man, you need to get that done. And he's like, why? He's like, I enjoy the process of putting it together. It'll get done when it gets done. And when were you here last? I said 6 months ago. He's like, yeah, look at the difference. I was like, well, can I put a couple pieces in? And he said, sure. Right. So there wasn't this expectation of time. Now, what if I hate puzzle making? What if I just can't stand it? What do I do? Am I going to help people solve it, or am I going to be grumpy about it? Do I believe I have something to add or not? What do you think? Does time really matter when solving a puzzle, or does mindset matter more? Let's move to the kind of the middle of this, and actually that's out of order. So let me go over to the left side, right? And on the left side, it's triangulating. What's obvious? There are many moving parts, and it's the lack of coordination alignment that creates the problem. The thing about this is that I've learned is what's obvious for me isn't necessarily obvious for somebody else. So how am I going to move away from, hey, by doing this, I'm going to get crushed and eviscerated, to I don't know exactly what I'm doing, and I need to engage, because if I don't do it, nobody else will. How do I move to that? How do I engage and say, I'm going to figure out as I go, because I am engaging. I can't just expect the answer. I got to move pieces around. I have to mix up the pieces. I need to look at the pieces and group them and move them around and figure out what it is. And it's only going to get solved by engaging. I need to move towards that. So what does that mean? It means something like thinking about the micro individual puzzle pieces and the overall puzzle pieces as they relate to each other. But in this case, I still don't have the box. Still don't have the cover. So can I make big groupings and small groupings? Can I look for colors and patterns? Can I see how they interrelate? And just put the energy into it so that emerges. What does align? What can I group? What assumptions am I making? And when I think about that, what would you say, or what would you think? I mean, what's obvious for me is there's blue ones on the left, and there's more kind of tan colors on the right. What do you think? I remember there was another story. My son had a kid come over, and he basically can't put like 2 or 3 puzzle pieces together on this puzzle. This is a long time ago. He was a kind of a I think before kindergarten. So it was a kind of a 10, 15, 20 piece puzzle, kid puzzle. And the kid put 2 or 3 puzzle pieces together, and that basically unlocked the whole thing for my son. And they just built it really super fast. So that's kind of thing here. When you start solving a puzzle, right? Think about this. When you start this process, do you expect it to be done, or is it about helping move forward and triangulating, right? So in this view, what's obvious to you, and what can you build, and what can you put together? Where would you start? What would you build off of? And what can you do to move it forward? So then what about the middle, the middle of the puzzle piece box 3D process? Well, we don't have a cover on the box, so we're going to have to figure out how these parts work together. So how do I move to, well, that's just dumb. Everybody's got a cover on the box these days. Everybody knows what's the cover of the box. It's just dumb to think we don't have a cover of the box. Clearly, we have a cover of the box, but really we don't. So, how do I start looking for patterns and calling them out? How do I adapt really a, puzzle solving mindset? I mean, I don't know about you, but when I think about engaging in puzzles, my demeanor and my mindset shifts. I go more zen. I think about it more of a journey than a destination. So how do I move to that in what we're doing? How do I ask others what they're seeing? How do I build off of what they're putting together? And then, how do I engage in that and not think it's a waste of time, right? Because the tangle here is it's a waste of time. And, that's a challenge. And if I believe that it's a waste of time, how am I going to overcome that? I'm going to try it and see what happens. I'm going to encourage engagement. I'm going to suspend judgment, and I'm going to overcome that tangle that way. And, asking myself, what's the mindset? What do I really see? Where can I start? And that's going to help me be successful. So to detangle myself from tackling that challenge, I can approach this on a lot of different ways. If there's no cover box, I can start figuring out maybe what this looks like. Maybe on the left there's water, and maybe on the right there's sky. Maybe it's indoor versus outdoor. Maybe it's concrete or abstract. I mean, what do you think the left is, and what do you think the right is? What kind of puzzles are these? Are there animals? Is it boats? Is it military tanks? Right? And is that a waste of time to ask those questions? Probably not. They're critical to progress. They can create a little bit of maybe conflict because people don't have the answers. But how would you go about engaging to figure this out with no puzzle box? What shortcuts have you taken before that work? And can you share those and figure out how to do that with others, right? Because that's the key. So we've walked through 3 pieces. We started with 1 and then 2 and then 3. And the tangles with 1 were this idea of time and more. And what if I don't view time as a constraint? What if I engage in the process? Then we went over to the left side, and this challenge of triangulating the obvious, and this tangle there was, I got to be right. I got to be right. And how do I, when I engage in the puzzle piece building, puzzle solving process, I don't have to be right. I just have to inject the energy and contribute and figure out what that looks like. And it basically emerges as we go. So it's more about the energy I put into it than being right. And then in the middle, the tangle there is that's a waste of time. We don't know the puzzle box. We don't know what that puzzle box looks like. So how would you engage in that idea of figuring out the puzzle cover, and what techniques and shortcuts? I think we all have some, whether it's start with the corners, start with the straight edges, group the colors. We've all learned shortcuts. So that leads to ways to overcome tangles, right? By using this puzzle piece approach. And then, when you think about the 3D nature, the complexity of it, my tangle on that is I feel like I need more information, right? So how do I move from, hey, I don't work this way, I don't see things in 3D. What do we mean by 3D versus 2D? And thinking I need more information there, versus embracing the concept that there are interrelated parts and each part's going to interact with each other. And how do I commit to engaging to learn, and starting with where we are and being open to going slow to go fast, right? Because it's not linear. It's more like a Rubik's Cube. And the more you try to solve a Rubik's Cube, sometimes the more it can mess it up. But there's algorithms and there's shortcuts to the Rubik's Cube, but it requires that energy of manipulation and using it to be solved. You can't just observe a Rubik's Cube to a solution. Somebody's got to put the energy in to maneuver it. And every time you do that, each interaction affects the overall, puzzle and the overall solution. So, what do I do when I start getting tangled in that? It's because the complexity is bigger than what I'm used to. So, how do I ratchet that back and think more about it's okay and embrace that? What am I going to choose to believe about this? That the process is that, I have to trust the process and lean into our principles. And it's okay if I don't know the answer. So in that view, how would you figure that puzzle out? This is the Rubik's Cube, and we've been looking at this puzzle. Do you know what it is? What's the answer? What is that puzzle box, right? What's on the left? What is that picture? What's on the right? How would you answer that? And it's probably pretty hard. It's probably pretty hard to say what this is. And that's because we actually haven't put the effort in to engage, to figure it out together. This is a static picture moment in time that we keep referring back to. There really hasn't been us engaging to figure out that problem. So it's still unsolvable in that way. But what if we had different pictures and we were actually in a room together and we were applying what I just said? What would emerge? You know, we would emerge to the answer. And let me show you what that looks like. On the left, believe it or not, that's a wolf. Who would have thought that, right? I would never have guessed that in a million years, but we would have figured that out together by following those things I mentioned through these phases. What's the right? What do you think the right is? Yeah, you were never going to guess. It's a barn of animals. And excuse me, the thing about that is in both cases, you're not seeing all the puzzle pieces available to you. Um, so that we're in both pictures using what's only in the frame of the picture of what we see. So in that, engaging to figure it out, beginning with the end in mind, we know that we're solving a puzzle, working on the immediate puzzle, what's in front of us, what can we see, what can we observe, calling that out, triangulating what's obvious, and putting the effort in or the energy in to manipulate the pieces in the context of the greater whole, zooming in, zooming out, and embracing that new approach, we can get to that answer. We can get to that answer of what these puzzle covers look like, and we can emerge to that because we don't know what it looks like. And there's some other things too, right? Doing it with other people speeds it up. Doing it by yourself slows it down, like that guy that's been working on the puzzle for 6 months. If he had 5 to 10 people helping him, it would be faster. Also, the key to this whole thing is engagement and people actually talking and calling things out and grouping and manipulating the individual puzzle pieces. Without that, the puzzle's not solved, or it's solved really very slowly. And then also making it fun, playing that game, playing the long game, that this will emerge over time. And that's how the puzzle gets revealed. So there's a lot of tangles along the way, right? This idea that we all have different perspectives. Maybe we don't feel like there's time. I've definitely shared that challenge. I feel like I need more information sometimes. I feel like I need to have this idea of control, right? From a control perspective, I need to know what the answer is, but really what I can control is my action and my energy. The feeling to need to be right, that engaging in something that I'm not sure of makes me feel like the answer is not attainable, or I'm going to be out on a limb. But in a puzzle solving process, it doesn't make any sense to feel that way. And then it's not a waste of time to engage. If I engage, it's not a waste of time because the challenge reveals itself. So, I can find the time in puzzle solving if I take the long game. I can detangle myself from the more tangle, but not worrying about having all the information, but engaging with what's in front of me. I can overcome the control tangle by not taking it all on by myself, but leaning into others and building off of what's currently right in front of me. I can overcome the right tangle by suspending the need to actually have the answer and figuring out what's right to engage. Redirecting that need to be right with what is right to engage. What's the right way to engage here in this puzzle solving approach? And then I can relieve my, burden, if you will, on the waste tangle to say it's not a waste of time if I'm providing intentional support of the problem solving process. If I have something to add and something to contribute, no matter how small it is, it's not a waste of time. And that's how I'm connecting the dots between the 3D puzzle piece process and the tangles, and how the tangles showed up as I was working through the 3D process. And the tangles themselves can be actually redirected. That energy I feel because I'm tangled can be redirected if I embrace the process of 3D problem solving. So I'd love your feedback on that. Look forward to talking to you soon about basically what you're seeing in the 3D puzzle solving process. Take care.